cried the Sparrow.
You're listening to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an update here on Cape Cod. Just finished putting out the episode with the Vanabond Tales, which was pretty cool, and super interesting. I still can't get over the fact, like sailing. I mean, as a solo sailor, I'm used to just dealing with myself, but then not only adding crew, but adding an infant or a 14-month-old. I don't know if that's an infant or a toddler. I'm not quite up to snuff on those sort of nomenclature, but wow, it is impressive. So big thanks to them for coming on the show and slicing away some time. But yeah, we're stuck here in the old Cape. Boy, this late fall weather is ugly and mean and scary. Thankfully, I have my trusty brew. I absolutely love it. The coffee keeps me going. I have to tell you that much. But yeah, we're kind of waylaid here. So we, after the last one, I think I wrapped up and did a little post-op and everything from the last little trip. So now we're moving forward. We're trying to figure out what the heck's going to happen because, essentially this next trip's going to be solo. I've got to get out of the Nantucket Sound. I've got to traverse about 380 miles to get, and that's as the crow flies towards the Chesapeake Bay. Obviously, there's a few stops along the way that I could probably make, but it is rather daunting with the weather that we are looking at. Oh, man, what a bummer. At first, 3 days ago, the forecast looked like once Melissa and all this kind of passes by, we're going to be, it looked like a decent window of kind of west-northwesterly turning into northwesterly, staying pretty docile, except for maybe a day, pretty much all the way down to the Chesapeake for 4 days, because that's what I need. I'd like to have a nice 4-day window. I don't think I'm going to get it. I think Mother Nature is just ramped right into essentially wintertime, and yeah, a bit of a bummer because I do need to get this boat south. I don't want to get trapped, and I can't, even though the generosity of my hostess here is unequivocally no, that's not the right word. What's the best way to? Her generosity is essentially knows no bound, but I obviously never want to abuse or take advantage of that by any means. So it's one of those things where I want to get the boat off of her dock so that we can get south and stuff. Plus, we've got the other boat that needs to go from the Chesapeake down further south around Hatteras and everything like that. So it's a modge podge. I find myself in kind of a new situation because I've never been trying to move two boats at the same time during this part of the season to get them south. So yeah, a little bit different than just trying to do one boat. So it's like a game of leapfrog in a way, which is out of character. But when the world presents us these challenges, we just gotta dive right in and do our best, right? I suppose. And I don't know. It's kind of neat because it's a different sort of thing. But I would prefer the weather to be awesome and be able to just go without even worrying like, well, today we'll have wind, tomorrow we won't, that sort of thing. No, it's like today we'll have a gale, tomorrow we won't. And yeah, unfortunately, the first day, the day that looked like it was going to be good, which was Sunday, by about, I don't know, Sunday evening, the winds start to come out of, oh, you guessed it, the southwest, exactly where I need to go. And that's no fun because old Sparrow, she doesn't really like to beat to weather very much unless it is a dead flat sea, and I don't see it ever being like that, not in this time of the season. So we're just going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to keep plugging away at these projects. Thankfully, Adam and I were able to rip the boom off of Sparrow and do some much-needed maintenance. We replaced the outhaul with some Dyneema. The outhaul parted on the way down here, but I always have a little safety line on there, so that definitely saved us from a massive headache, let's say. The next was, when I measured up the sails, it's so complicated. It's like 11-page thing, all sorts of stuff, and obviously I screwed it up a bit, and the reef points were a little too the cheek blocks and the little tie down area were just a little too forward, or the sail reef points were a little too further aft. Long story short, I could put these reefs in, but not only can I not get the proper flat foot tension, so the sail's not being pulled out horizontally enough. It crunches the sail down because a whole bunch of the sail is coming down, just underneath that reef line, and that's a lot of friction. It's also a lot of tension right on the actual sail as it bunches up. So no bueno there, but we solved that one, and it'll be interesting to see how that works now because we added a cheek block and another little, I guess it's a D ring. I don't know, technically, whatever. So you tie the reef line off, you go through the sail, you come back through the cheek block, and then go forward. Regular slab reefing, but we added one a little further aft, so all reef lines are going to shift aft about 4 inches, which should be just about the perfect angle if I eyeballed it correctly. So that's kind of cool. Replaced a couple other things, went over it with a fine-tooth comb, and then waxed and polished that old girl. So she's looking better than she has in quite some time, which is great. New little system for the preventer. I run a pretty simple preventer system on this boat where there's about a 3-foot line, I'd call it a tag line, with a tiny clip on the end. And that's what I attach my preventer to. That stays on the aft end of the boom all the time. It's got a little bungee to keep it very taut and out of the way, but you basically unclip that. You have your preventer run from all the way forward, all the way back to the cockpit. I clip it onto that bowline, good to go. Piece of cake, super easy, one line and done. So that's new. And yeah, that's about it. And Adam went through and cleaned up the winches for the outhaul and for the reef line. So those are going to be smooth, or they are already smooth and wonderful. So yeah, at this point, it's going to be just basically messing around with any other little projects that I might want to do. Again, the nice part, if I want to get back into, if it looks like I'm going to be here for a few more days, if I want to get back into painting some of the shelves and doing interior paint with, the fumes and all that sort of stuff, I can go post up in the boathouse and not intoxicate myself with chemical air all night long while I try and sleep. Although I bet the sleeping will be pretty good. But it might be a bit dangerous, huh? You think? Yeah, quite possibly. That's me being funny. So I don't know if you caught that one. Yeah, other than that, shout out to Joseph, who wanted to send me a heater because I've been complaining about the heat. Well, sir, I have made it around the world without a heater, and I don't intend to have a heater on this boat. I want to be stoic, and I will try my best not to complain about the heat. I'm just going to throw on an extra set of long johns, and I'm actually really toasty warm right now, and it's 50 degrees out, so no big deal, but I appreciate the thought. You are the man. Up there in Chicago. I wonder how cold it is in Chicago right now. Yeah, other than that, geez, yeah, we're just going to kind of keep plugging away and, mixing it up with some of the kind, wonderful, generous people of Cape Cod who have been so wonderful to not only me, but also to my little mighty Sparrow. So it is never, or it is always surprising just how generous people will be with their lives and with their abilities when people are in need. So I do really, really, really appreciate that. But I am dreaming. I keep trying while I'm like kind of buckled in. I'm like, I'm. It's so easy to focus on just like, oh, the weather's not good. Oh, and this is getting delayed, and that's getting delayed, and it's you get this domino effect. We did at one point have it planned where I was going to possibly join one of John Kretschmer's little symposium or clinics down in Fort Lauderdale mid-December, but that's blown out of the water because definitely not going to be done moving these boats by then. And yeah, it has a ripple effect down the line. But if I just sit there and focus on that, then I'm going to drive myself crazy. So I'm going to try and keep my gaze on the good things that are going on now, the possibilities that I can take advantage of while I can't do exactly what I want to do. So, that whole thing of when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, all that sort of stuff. As hokey as that is, it's very, very true. And it can lead to it can lead to productivity, surprising productivity, things that you never thought you were going to be able to do, and then all of a sudden you get to do them because you have this little break. But if you're looking at if you're being a curmudgeon and you just look at like the things that aren't going good and you stay focused on those, you miss this opportunity to then, shift your gears over somewhere else and be like, oh, hey, well, let's tackle that one because we got 2 days. And then that won't be such a headache anymore. And, the other beauty of that is you dive into some project and it allows your worries and your frustrations to take a break because now all of a sudden you're being productive and you're also focused elsewhere. So you're not just constantly going back and be like, oh, the weather, oh, the weather, oh, the weather. Oh, the delays, all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I don't know if that makes too much sense, but those are sort of the things that I try to keep working on because, I see these things and I get frustrated and I get like anxious and I'm like, why isn't this working well? And it's like any trick you can do, anything you can pull out of that book, out of that back pocket is always a beneficial thing. And I don't know. I think as a solo sailor, I've had to do that for so long while I was out at sea for all those long distance voyages that you got to keep your head screwed on correctly, but you're also trying desperately to enjoy your time and keep the morale high. So food for thought right there. I'm gonna go crank out a little breakfast and then come up with a game plan for today. Make my list, get some stuff done, and then I've got a lovely dinner with some friends tonight. And holy cow, am I looking forward to that. Thanks for listening. And this one's obviously, we're going to plug a couple of these updates together along the way until we get a suitable amount of me jabbering on like a crazy person. Thanks for listening. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Today, October 2nd? Or is it the 3rd? Today's the 2nd. Happy November. Yeah, not October. Jeez, just woke up. Let's take the old mandatory sip of this lovely coffee. It's actually Sparrow's coffee up here on the Cape. So that's pretty good. I like that. Big gift from Lucy. Well, patience. Patience is a virtue. Patience, something the ocean teaches us. Unfortunately, our modern civilization sure as heck doesn't. And I've been on land too long to have that beautiful, patient soul that I develop out at sea. But no, I'm in kind of not a pickle by any means. I don't want to frame it like that. But I am pretty far up north still. The weather is daunting, to say the least, and I've got another boat that I am going to help get around Cape Hatteras down to the southern states, maybe Florida. And Sparrow sits on her lovely little perch up here. And, man, we were looking at a decent window that sort of just fell apart. the forecast has been so changeable, so variable that I'm kind of having to watch it a couple times a day and see how the thing's developing. But essentially, the question I have is like, oh, what are you willing to put up with, and what are you gonna? I don't know. I don't know what the best way to frame this all is. There's like an expectation, I think, sometimes that I put on myself of, oh, dude, you can handle it. It doesn't matter. Storms, blah, 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 gales, that's fine. No, it's not fine. It's miserable. It's scary. It's rough on the crew. It's rough on the boat. And yeah, I don't know. I think I was falling into that little ego gap or ego trap of oh, this system doesn't look too bad. I should be able to weather that. And it's kind of like you get to a point where you've done enough of it where you're kind of like, well, is there a way not to have to deal with that? And the answer lies in patience and being flexible and all that sort of stuff. But let me pull back a little. Let's talk about what the deal is and what I'm trying to do. So essentially, I'm up here in Nantucket Sound, Cape Cod, comfy, cozy, safe, one of the most protected harbors I think I've ever seen. And, we just weathered some pretty ugly weather for the last few days, blowing really hard, but you wouldn't know it until you walk down to the beach. And I did a little Instagram post on that. That weather has passed. It's still a nice little breeze. Tomorrow it lightens way up. But essentially, the goal is to get from here down to the Chesapeake Bay, to get to Deltaville. And that's about, all said and told, dock to dock, about 428 miles. And Sparrow averages typically, if you take into account having to beat into the wind, having a hove to, having a race day where you're broad reaching and doing 150 miles, we're going to call the average 110. And, or no, let's be more conservative, 100 miles. So we're looking at a 4-day trip. The only problem is it's November. And I've done the trip a million times from Maine down south, usually the offshore route, and we all know how that's gone sometimes. But for the vast majority of those trips, yeah, you take a beating once or twice, but then you get past the Gulf Stream and you're good to go. Now this one, obviously we're staying a little more on the inside coastal route, maybe 100 miles offshore, something like that, on this next leg. And yeah, the plan is to get down there and park Sparrow and hop on this other vessel. And then at the first convenient weather forecast to get around Hatteras, the big speed bump there is the opportunity we need. And then I would come back up, grab Sparrow, wait again for another opportunity, get around Hatteras, and bring her all the way down to Florida. So that's the goal, and I'm only focusing on, because I don't want to overwhelm myself, I'm only trying to focus right now on this little hop, and so that's what I've been doing. Just Sparrow, just me, Cape Cod, Chesapeake Bay. And what we were looking at, where is my device that tells me weather things? Oh, Lord, there it is. What we were looking at for a few days leading up to this morning, which was I was going to just make the call this morning when I got up and saw the 8 a.m. forecast. And essentially, and it was kind of nice actually, because I woke up at, I don't know, I looked at my watch and it was like 6, and I was like, oh geez, all right, here we go. And then I realized daylight savings. So I got another hour of sleep, which was great. But yeah, what we were looking at leading up to this was essentially a decent day with lighter winds today out of the west. So, but then going into a hole tonight and having a motor, and then the winds flopping 180 degrees and kind of still being able to make good headway, kind of on a close reach towards my destination. But then it gets very unsettled. There's like a broken low, just, I don't know, really really odd looking sort of thing that those oftentimes make my hair stand up a little bit when they're very disorganized because you don't know if they're going to organize all of a sudden. And one of the issues is these systems are big enough that the southern portion of them are basically being affected by the Gulf Stream. And we all know what the Gulf Stream can do because it's hot and it's energetic and it can pump a huge amount of energy into any of these systems, and they can just go nuclear without much warning. But essentially, it was going to be blowing 30, gusting into the 40s. So that would have been day 3. And I probably wouldn't have made much headway because I would have been motoring and all that sort of stuff. So that would have been a little bouncy, but nothing to write home about. And it would have been short-lived. By Thursday evening, it would have eased off a bit. And I still would be, pretty much pointed straight towards the Chesapeake. And then you go through just another little shift, some lighter winds on Wednesday, and that's when the one that I was kind of worried about starts, and that's a strong southwesterly coming up, blowing into the high 20s, and then getting up into the 30s. And initially, the southern edge of this one was, in line with almost Delaware Bay, and now it's in line with like Cape Fear, so it's expanded, and it's gotten a little testier. I think the gusts in this one were up going to be in the high 40s. Yeah. And the problem is it's going to be blowing out of, for the first half, it's going to be blowing out of the southwest and then turning around and blowing pretty hard out of the northwest, which is good because then again, I'm headed right in the right direction, but it's blowing hard. And then by Thursday evening, it eases up. So it was, again, going to be kind of short-lived, but I don't know, man. Something about it didn't seem quite too, definitely didn't seem like it was going to be pleasant by any means. Hove to for a while and then wait for the big shift and then go. One of the things you got to remember when these shifts happen, essentially I go from a standstill, hove to, and the waves are building up out of the southwest, the direction I want to go. And then the wind shifts, and now you are sailing full steam ahead into that old swell and wave chop. So it's like you're hitting an impediment every 9 to 10 seconds. And that's kind of painful in a west sail with that big rounded bow. It's like, ugh, it's like this thumping. I've done it many, many times, and it's not very pleasant. And it's also kind of slow. You don't quite get the steam up until the wave chop eases off a little bit. And then by Friday, it's nice and pleasant, but then it starts, building up again. I would think I would have been in port before the winds switched again out of the south, but I don't know. Its initial outlook, I was like, this is doable. It's not going to be all that bad. But as the wind speeds and stuff increased, and the size of these systems increased, I was like, nah, nope. We're just not going to do it. We're not doing this one because I have other options available. What I'm afraid of at this point is now we're getting later in the season. The disaster trip in 2022, I left Rockland, Maine, November 14th, and that was a handful the whole freaking time I was out there, without much rest in between the systems. I think the only lucky part about this is that if I need to, let's say I go down, and I'm just kind of spitballing these ideas through my head. I appreciate anybody that wants to listen to me sort through this, but essentially what I'm thinking is fly down to Baltimore, hop on this boat with the first available window, which looks like it'll be like Friday-ish, in between some of these things, like Friday into Saturday, get around Hatteras, and then, once it is pretty amazing. Once you get south of Hatteras, a lot of this weather, the severity of it increases north of Hatteras, and it decreases going south. So better weather is there. Just gotta get far enough south to get to it. But Yeah, if I were to fly down there, and then hey, the only problem is now we're looking at me getting back up here. No earlier than maybe the 15th of November. That dreadful, or no, the 14th of November. That dreadful day, that anniversary of that departure from Maine, where I broke icicles off of the freaking mainsail. Jeez, I will never forget that. That was a cold night. So essentially, that looks like it's going to be the most favorable plan because I definitely want to get them down there and I want to wrap that one up for sure. That's going to be an awesome trip. Great people. Awesome boat, too. Fast. Halberg Rossi 39. Woo! It's going to be like a rocket ship. Um, and then just come up and grab Sparrow. And my thinking is if I don't get a window to do a straight shot, well, here's the thing, because I won't have because I'll have a bit more time to get the boat down there. I can do one of two things. If there is an opportunity and a window to do the offshore shot where I leave here and I just gun it for the Gulf Stream, get across the Gulf Stream, just go and due south and try and get to that finer southern weather where I'm going to be on the south side of these lows and not on the top. That would be one option. Other option would be get that 4-day window, which that's going to be tough to get a 4-day window. I'm not going to lie. But if we get a 4-day window, make the jump, boom, to the Chesapeake, hold up until we get the next window to get around Hatteras, and then go down. And then the other option, which is not my first choice by any means as far as the actual trip, but it definitely would allow for some pretty sweet visits to some pretty cool people and places along the way. And that would be to look for a little 2-day window, which you definitely can get some of those, and make my way over to New York City. Hold up there until the next window, go from New York down to the Chesapeake. That's a bit of a shorter hop. And then make the hot, do a little inchworm action. Now, the tricky part with that as a solo sailor is that the difficult times and the times where you're tired but you can't sleep are when you're pulling in and out of these places. You get within 10 miles of Sandy Hook, and now all of a sudden you got to be right on your toes. There's a ton of traffic. Pulling into New York is definitely a bit stressful. It's not terrible, but it's one of those things where my brain starts going off into like what's gonna break, what's gonna go wrong, the engine's gonna fail, then I'm gonna be trying to sail through all this chaos, that sort of thing. But you just don't sleep at all, and it's very hard to get into the good rhythm where you're offshore, you're more than like 20, 40 miles offshore, and then you can get your sleep. But then the minute I get close enough that I just don't sleep anymore, and it's like, all right, time's ticking. Let's get this boat to its destination so that I can go and collapse. And I'm no spring chicken. I do it all the time still, but man, I don't think it's good for me. Those long nights of either motoring or really, really attentive sailing through, places like Nantucket Sound through the middle of the night. I mean, both times I've pulled in here, I've essentially gone through the cut at like midnight, and then I'm working my way up, through the shoals and stuff like that all night long to then reach port at daybreak and then just collapse. So we'll see. We'll see what the game plan is. And obviously it's fluid. It has to be fluid. That's one of the things that I think passage planning and everything have always taught me, is that you have to be ready to go on a moment's notice, but you have to be ready to stay and sit and kind of make do with a bit of a pause the best you can. And how I typically do that is, one, I get the boat ready so that all I got to do is stow a few things that I've got laying about, computers or blah blah blah, and but the boat itself is ready. She's fueled. The sails are set. All that sort of stuff is ready to go. So, because like right now, I could in 15 minutes pack everything up, fire up the engine, and start motoring my way south. And that's just how we're going to have to keep Sparrow poised for a while. If I decide to go and hop a flight and get down there and leave Sparrow here, then I can relax a little bit on that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a bummer. I think the other part that kind of got in my head a little bit was that I thought I had a chance. I was like, "Ooh, this looks like an opportunity," and it was right on the edge of oh yeah, this is doable, and this is going to be an absolute miserable bash fest. I was right on the doable side of things, and unfortunately, over the last like 12 hours, that definitely has changed. And I don't know. There's part of me definitely knew it was gonna pipe up a little higher. It wasn't gonna diminish, not at this time of year. So I don't know. All part of the adventure. If you listen to some of the previous shows earlier about this voyage and all this sort of stuff, I remember talking about, I'm just gonna try and enjoy this for what it is. I don't know what weather's going to get thrown my way. I don't know, where exactly I'm going to end up going each time. And instead of freaking out about it, because I'm a planning Pete. I love to plan. I like to know exactly what the game plan is and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes in life, you just can't have it. And, there was this guy on a plane decades ago that I sat next to, and he told me this one very, very sage piece of wisdom that I've never forgotten. And I couldn't have been much more than in my early 20s. And he said, reality's here. Expectations, if they're way up here, everything in between is frustration. And so what you got to do to get rid of that is you got to take that reality and bring it down, or take those expectations down to reality. And when you do that, you get rid of that frustration, and then you deal with the situation in a much more realistic way. And you focus on it instead of getting so heated. As they would say, your wires are touching up in Maine. Spark, spark. So that's it. That's kind of the update from HQ over here on Cape Cod. I had a wonderful dinner last night. Tell you, the hostess with the mostest. I have rarely in my life, or no, actually I shouldn't say that. I've definitely been very, very blessed and very fortunate and filled with gratitude for all of the people that I have met along the way in this crazy thing called life, from Michigan to the islands, and now to the East Coast and more specifically New England. But it's just great. It's so great meeting and greeting and sharing experiences with people. And tomorrow we might be able to sail a Wiano Senior, which is about a 24-foot old school wooden boat, from one port to the next with some new friends. And that could be a lot of fun and really kind of an interesting experience for sure. No engine on this one. It's all powered by the wind. So that could be pretty cool. So there are some highlights that might be happening along the way, and I'm going to try and focus on those and not on the fears of, well, okay, I'll tell you, to wrap it up, the fear is, and it's a big one, and this is a reality, is that it could get to a point where it's too late in the season, and I got to just find a place to haul out, which is not what I want to do by any means. I mean, I got to call the dock down in Florida tomorrow and say, hey, if I can't get this boat down there, am I on the hook for all that dockage, all that sort of stuff? Or is it going to be one of those things where I can't make it, so you're going to give that dock away to somebody else? Because that would be rough. I don't know. I probably should have asked that question. Yeah, but yeah, that's the fear. The fear is that I got to call Chief up there at Night Marine and be like, hey, you got a spot for me? You got a spot still? You got any stands left? Because they're filling up. They were pretty much almost topped up full. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to try not to focus on that. Those what ifs, the worst case scenario. I mean, it's good to plan for it, obviously. So I will reach out and make a few phone calls, but see what my options would be. But I'm not going to dwell on that because I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to focus on the task at hand and essentially hope with fingers crossed that we will actually find a nice little window, which I'm sure we will, right? Yeah, it's bound to happen. We got I have all the way until, if I couldn't get out of here until December, then yeah. So that gives me essentially the entire month of November. I don't have the next speaking gig is the 10th of December, and so I just need to be back and land based and ready to go and head in the game, so to speak, in that game by the end of the first week of December. So that gives me 5 weeks essentially to wrap all this up and get Sparrow wherever the heck she's going to end up going. So hopefully it's Florida, so I can do some nice sales all winter long, in between other stuff. And yeah, I don't know. The other thing, obviously, I'm going to be taking a lot of trips out to good old Seattle to go meet up with Oliver. That's going to be interesting. He's working away, getting systems going, doing all that stuff while the boat's on the hard. And he's with his old man, which is great. That doesn't necessitate me, being out there constantly or anything like that. I think my job is going to be more important when we actually splash the boat and do all that stuff. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. 2026 is coming right down the pipe, and at first I was kind of like, not a whole lot yet on the old books, just a few things here and there. And then, when it rains, it pours. All of a sudden, a lot of stuff is on the plate, and it's looking like 2026 is going to be a very busy one, just like 2025, which I am so thankful for. Holy smokes. After all those early 2020s of struggle to just try and not have to sell my boat. Because my boat's my home. If you don't know that, this is where I reside. Kind of skipped that idea of buying a house and all that sort of stuff, and just went with the old floating home. So we will see, but forging forward, staying positive, and getting after it. So I'm gonna clean up the boat, make some calls. Well, no, it's Sunday. Sunday is a day where I try not to bother people with that sort of stuff. So all the calls I'm going to make are going to be more fun-based. And, yeah, we're going to try and get out. I think I might take a little stroll down to the beach once I and I got to do laundry. Holy smokes, I got to do laundry. All right. Till next time. Thanks for listening.